The Galactic Marine Corps had a saying, if you can survive Kepler 447b, you can survive anything. This was about to become the most embarrassingly inaccurate statement in military history. Commander Vextarian Clothep adjusted his 17 medals of valor and gazed upon his elite squad with the sort of pride usually reserved for parents whose children had just learned to use a toilet without causing a small explosion. His team represented the absolute pinnacle of military excellence across 47 star systems. They had trained on Kepler 447b, a Class 12 Deathworld, where the gravity could crush diamonds. The atmosphere was basically weaponized soup, and the local wildlife considered eating you a light snack before their real dinner. "Gentlemen," Clothep announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had personally strangled a Rigelian battle squid with his own tentacles, "we are about to embark on a routine reconnaissance mission to a primitive backwater planet designated as Class 15. According to our intelligence, this world harbors a species so laughably weak that they require protective clothing to survive their own sun." The squad erupted in what could only be described as sophisticated alien snickering. Sergeant Blixnorp, who had once arm-wrestled a volcanic eruption and won, wiped a tear from his eye. "Class 15? Sir, isn't that the rating they give to planets where the dominant species gets injured by water falling from the sky?" "Precisely!" Clothep beamed. "This will be easier than that time we accidentally conquered 3 solar systems while trying to find a decent restaurant. The locals call themselves humans, and apparently they're so fragile they need to wrap themselves in dead plant matter just to maintain basic dignity. Our mission is simple: observe, catalogue their weaknesses, and try not to laugh too loudly." What nobody mentioned in the briefing was that the galactic classification system had been designed by a committee, and like most things designed by committees, it was about as accurate as a blind Arcturian trying to perform surgery with a spoon. The landing on Earth went smoothly, if you ignored the part where their supposedly indestructible military transport got a dent from what the locals cheerfully called a light breeze. The squad materialized in what their instruments identified as a low-threat maintenance facility, specifically the basement of the Pemberton Municipal Office Building in downtown Nowheresville. "Remember," Clothep whispered, as they crept through corridors that seemed suspiciously clean for a civilization that hadn't mastered basic hygiene. "These creatures are so primitive, they probably worship the shiny surfaces they create by rubbing dead animals on rocks. That's when they encountered Bertram Wigglesworth. Bertram was doing what Bertram did every Tuesday morning, mopping the floor while humming an off-key version of My Way and wondering if the coffee machine upstairs was still making that horrible grinding noise that sounded like a dying hippopotamus. He was 63 years old, had been the building's janitor for 42 years, and possessed the sort of unflappable demeanor that comes from having seen everything at least twice. "Oh, my stars!" Clothep gasped as they rounded the corner and found themselves face to face with a human. "A native! Quick, assume defensive positions!" The squad immediately formed a combat formation that had been perfected through centuries of warfare against the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. Blixnorp raised his plasma rifle. Ziniflex activated his personal force field. Quorvash began calculating 17 different escape routes. Bertram looked up from his mop, observed the collection of heavily armed aliens now pointing various weapons at him, and said, "Oh, hello there. You fellows hear about the plumbing in the 3rd-floor bathroom? Because I've been telling them for months that pipe's gonna burst." The silence that followed was the kind of silence that occurs when reality takes a sharp left turn and forgets to signal. It's not running away," Blixnorp whispered in amazement. "Maybe it's broken," suggested Ziniflex. Clothep stepped forward, drawing himself up to his full height of 7 feet, his battle armor gleaming with the light of 1,000 conquered worlds. "Primitive creature, we are the elite forces of the Galactic Marine Corps. Tremble before our might." Bertram blinked slowly. Well, that's nice, dear, but you're dripping water on my freshly mopped floor. Could you move over to the carpet? I just finished this section. And then something unprecedented happened. Commander Vexitarian Clothep, veteran of the siege of Betelgeuse, survivor of the Battle of the Crimson Nebula, the alien who had once made a Thanatosian death worm apologize for being rude, moved over to the carpet. Did our commander just take orders from a Class 15 life form? Corvash whispered. I think, Ziniflex replied slowly, we might have a problem. Bertram resumed his mopping with the casual efficiency of someone who had been perfecting the art for 4 decades. So what brings you boys to Earth? Business or pleasure? We are conducting a standard reconnaissance mission, Clothep replied, then immediately wondered why he was explaining military operations to what was supposed to be a barely sentient primitive. Your world has been classified as suitable for evaluation. Oh, how lovely! Bertram beamed. We don't get many visitors. Are you staying long? Because I should warn you, the water pressure on the 3rd floor is terrible, and don't even get me started on the air conditioning in the East Wing. Water pressure? Blixnorp exchanged glances with his teammates. On Kepler 447b, water pressure was measured in how quickly it could strip flesh from bone. Oh, yes. Bertram nodded enthusiastically. Sometimes it barely comes out at all, just a little trickle. Makes washing your hands take forever. The aliens stared. On their homeworlds, insufficient water pressure was usually a sign that the planet's core was about to explode. Perhaps, Clothep said carefully, you could show us around? We are curious about your civilization's achievements. Of course, Bertram brightened, though I should mention it's just a regular Tuesday. Nothing special happening today except I've got to fix that squeaky door in the supply closet. Been meaning to oil those hinges for weeks. As they followed Bertram through the building, the Marines began to notice things. Small things. Insignificant things. Like how Bertram casually lifted a water cooler that registered on their scanners as weighing roughly twice what any of them could manage. Or how he walked through air that their instruments indicated contained enough oxygen to cause immediate euphoria in most species, breathing it like it was perfectly normal. Excuse me, Ziniflex ventured, but don't you find this atmosphere rather intense? Oh, you mean the humidity? Bertram chuckled. Bit muggy today, isn't it? Though this is nothing compared to last summer. Now that was hot. I had to run the fans constantly. Their environmental suits were already working overtime to protect them from what the readouts described as atmospheric conditions marginally suitable for life. Bertram was wearing a light cardigan. And here's the supply closet, Bertram announced cheerfully, producing a key ring that jangled with the sound of 50 different keys. Now, where did I put that door oil? He opened the closet, and immediately 17 different cleaning chemicals, each one toxic enough to qualify as a war crime on most civilized worlds, wafted out in a cloud that made their hazmat sensors scream in electronic terror. Bertram breathed deeply. Nothing like the smell of industrial strength cleaner to start the day. Corvash's legs gave out. He sat down heavily on the floor, staring at readings that indicated he was currently being exposed to enough toxic fumes to kill a small space whale. This is impossible, he whispered. Nothing can survive in this environment. Oh, don't mind the smell, Bertram said helpfully. You get used to it after a while, though I do recommend opening a window when you're using the heavy-duty stuff. Learned that the hard way. He chuckled at some private memory involving chemical burns and a trip to the emergency room. Blixnorp was studying his scanner with the expression of someone whose entire worldview was crumbling like a cookie in a blender. Sir, he croaked, according to these readings, this creature has been exposed to enough environmental toxins to what, Sergeant? To melt a battleship, sir. Bertram emerged from the closet, carrying a small bottle of oil and a rag that looked like it had seen better decades. Right, let's get this door sorted. It's been squeaking for weeks and it's driving me up the wall. He knelt down beside the door hinges, and what happened next would be discussed in military academies for the next 3 centuries. Bertram Wigglesworth, Class 15 janitor, casually grasped the edge of a door that weighed roughly half a ton and lifted it off its hinges with the same effort most people use to pick up a newspaper. "There we go," he said cheerfully, applying oil to the hinges while holding the massive door in one hand like it was made of cardboard. "Just needs a bit of lubrication." The sound of 4 alien jaws hitting the floor simultaneously was like a percussion ensemble having a nervous breakdown. "Impossible," Clothep breathed. "That door is made of compressed steel alloy. It should weigh at least 400 kilograms. "Does it?" Bertram asked with mild interest, rehinging the door with a satisfied grunt. "Feels about normal to me. Though I suppose I've been doing this job for so long, you develop a bit of muscle memory. You know?" "Muscle memory," Ziniflex repeated faintly. "He calls it muscle memory." "Right then," Bertram said, dusting off his hands. "Let's head upstairs. I need to check on the boiler. Been making the most awful racket lately." The boiler room was located in what Bertram cheerfully described as the basement's basement. To reach it, they had to descend a staircase that their structural analysis indicated was held together primarily by wishful thinking and paint. The temperature rose steadily as they descended, until their cooling systems were running at maximum capacity just to keep them from melting. "Bit warm down here," Bertram observed, removing his cardigan and folding it neatly. "Hope you boys don't mind the heat." Their thermometers were registering temperatures that would have made a volcano feel self-conscious. Bertram was starting to perspire lightly. "This is the boiler," Bertram announced proudly, patting an enormous metal monster that was producing enough heat to power a small star. "She's been with us since 1987. Bit temperamental but reliable." The boiler was making a sound like a dragon with indigestion. Steam hissed from various joints, and the whole apparatus shook with each thunderous heartbeat of its mechanical processes. "Now," Bertram said, rolling up his sleeves, "the problem is with the pressure valve. Gets stuck sometimes, and then the whole thing starts making this terrible noise that keeps everyone awake." "Pressure valve." Clothep's voice was barely a whisper. "Oh yes, it's right here." Bertram pointed to a valve that was glowing cherry red with heat. "Just needs a good twist to loosen it up." And then, as 4 of the galaxy's most elite warriors watched in mounting horror, Bertram Wigglesworth reached out with his bare hands and grabbed the red-hot pressure valve. The sizzling sound was brief. The smell of burning flesh was non-existent. Bertram twisted the valve with a satisfied grunt, and the boiler's complainants immediately settled into a contented purr. "There we go," he said happily, examining his hands for any damage and finding none. "Nothing like fixing a problem properly, though I really should get some proper tools down here. Makes the job easier." Blixnorp had gone completely catatonic. Ziniflex was making small, whimpering noises. Corvash was writing what appeared to be his last will and testament on a piece of scrap paper. "Excuse me," Clothep managed, his voice cracking like a teenager's, "but didn't that hurt?" "What, the valve?" Bertram looked puzzled. "Oh, it was a bit warm, I suppose, but you get used to these things when you've been doing maintenance work as long as I have. The trick is not to think about it too much." "A bit warm," Clothep repeated. "A bit warm." "Well, yes," Bertram nodded reasonably. "I mean, it's not like I grabbed it bare-handed from the inside of a furnace or anything. That would be silly." The implications of this statement hung in the air like a toxic cloud of pure, concentrated terror. "Has anyone ever told you," Ziniflex asked weakly, "that you might be unusually resilient?" Bertram considered this. "Well, my doctor does say I'm remarkably healthy for my age. A blood pressure of a 20-year-old, he says, though I think that's probably just good genes. My grandmother lived to be 97, and she was still climbing ladders to clean gutters right up until the end." "Climbing ladders," Corvash whimpered, "at 97. "Oh yes, tough as old boots she was. I remember one time she fell off the roof while fixing the television antenna. 30-foot drop, straight onto concrete." got right back up, dusted herself off, and complained that she'd missed her favorite program. 30 feet, Blixnorp whispered, onto concrete. Mind you, Bertram continued conversationally, that was nothing compared to my cousin Eddie. He once got struck by lightning twice in the same afternoon while mowing his lawn. Didn't even go inside. Said he wanted to finish the job properly. Though he did mention his hair stood up funny for a week afterward. The aliens had stopped making coherent sounds. They were now communicating primarily through variations of horrified breathing. Right then, Bertram said brightly. Let's head back upstairs. I've got to vacuum the main hallway, and then there's that light bulb in the conference room that's been flickering. Probably just needs a good twist. The journey back to ground level was accomplished in stunned silence, broken only by the occasional sob from one of the Marines. When they finally reached the main floor, Bertram immediately busied himself with retrieving an industrial vacuum cleaner that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought regular vacuum cleaners weren't quite loud enough to wake the dead. This old girl's been with me for 15 years, Bertram said fondly, patting the machine like it was a beloved pet. Bit noisy, but she gets the job done. He plugged it in, and the sound that emerged was like a jet engine being strangled by a chainsaw. The vibrations were strong enough to make their teeth ache. Lovely, Bertram shouted over the din. Nothing like a good clean to brighten up the day. As he began methodically vacuuming the hallway, pushing the machine with the sort of casual strength that would have made a hydraulic system weep with envy, Commander Clothep finally found his voice. We need to leave, he croaked. We need to leave right now. But, sir, Ziniflex protested weakly, the mission parameters. Forget the mission parameters, Clothep snapped. This entire planet needs to be reclassified immediately. Class 15? This world should be Class 50 at minimum. 50? Corvash looked up from his impromptu therapy session with the wall. Sir, there is no Class 50. Then we'll invent one. Their heated discussion was interrupted by Bertram switching off the vacuum cleaner. Sorry about that, boys. Bit loud, isn't she? Now then, who wants a cup of tea while I change that light bulb? Tea? Blixnorp asked suspiciously. Oh yes, lovely cup of tea. Though I should warn you, I like mine good and strong, could probably strip paint with it. Bertram chuckled at his own joke, completely unaware that he had just described a beverage capable of dissolving most known metals. We really should be going, Clothep said quickly. Important military things to attend to. Oh, don't be silly, Bertram waved dismissively. You came all this way to visit. The least I can do is offer you a proper cup of tea and a biscuit. Besides, it's nearly lunchtime, and I've got some lovely sandwiches in the refrigerator. Made them myself this morning. Sandwiches, Ziniflex repeated, his voice hollow with defeat. Egg salad, Bertram announced proudly, with a bit of hot sauce to give them some kick, though I might have been a bit heavy-handed with the peppers. Last time I made them, old Mrs. Henderson from accounting said they were so spicy they made her eyes water. Clothop's scanner chose that moment to detect trace amounts of capsaicin in the air, enough capsaicin to qualify as a Class 7 chemical weapon under the Geneva Conventions of 17 different solar systems. The eggs, Corvash asked faintly. Where did you get the eggs? Oh, from my neighbor's chickens. Lovely fresh eggs, though you have to be careful collecting them. Those hens can be quite aggressive when they're protecting their nests. I've got scars on my arm from where Henrietta got me with her claws last month. Scars, Blixnorp repeated. From chickens. Well, they're only small scars, Bertram said modestly. And Henrietta didn't mean any harm. She's just protective of her babies. Though I will say, she's got quite a grip on her. Took me a good 5 minutes to get free, and that was with leverage. The mental image of this seemingly harmless human wrestling with what their databases classified as small, flightless avian creatures was somehow more terrifying than any of their previous combat experiences. We really need to go, Clothep insisted, beginning to back toward the exit. Urgent military communication to send. Very classified. Top secret. Oh, of course, Bertram nodded understandingly. "I completely understand. Important work to do. Though, before you go, could you give me a hand with this ladder? I need to change that light bulb in the conference room, and the ladder's a bit wobbly. Just need someone to hold it steady while I climb up." They turned to look at the ladder in question. It was approximately 12 feet tall, made of aluminum that had clearly seen better decades, and was currently held together by what appeared to be electrical tape and prayer. "You're going to climb that?" Ziniflex asked in horror. "Oh, yes, it's perfectly safe," Bertram assured them. "I've been using this ladder for years, though I probably should replace it soon. Last week one of the rungs broke while I was up there, and I had to hang on by my fingertips until I could swing over to grab the window ledge." "Hang on by your fingertips," Corvash whispered. "From 12 feet up." "Well, it was only for about 30 seconds, Bertram said cheerfully, though I will admit it was a bit awkward trying to explain to Mrs. Peterson why I was dangling outside her office window. She thought I was some sort of cat burglar." As Bertram began setting up the ladder, humming that same off-key version of My Way, Commander Clothep made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "Emergency evacuation protocol," he barked. "All personnel to the ship, immediately." "But, sir," Blixnorp began. "That's an order!" As the 4 Marines sprinted toward their landing craft with the sort of speed usually reserved for escaping supernovas, Bertram called after them cheerfully, "It was lovely meeting you. Do come back and visit again soon. And if you're ever in the neighborhood, I make a mean shepherd's pie." The ship's engines fired with enough force to crack windows in 3 neighboring buildings. As they achieved orbit in record time, Clothep was already composing his report to Galactic Command. "Priority Alpha transmission to all fleet commanders," he dictated shakily. "Planet Earth to be immediately reclassified from Class 15 to... He paused, trying to find words that could adequately describe what they had just experienced. "To Class Impossible." "Sir?" Blixnorp looked up from where he was being sick into a containment unit. "What should we put in the threat assessment section?" Clothep stared out the viewport at the blue-green planet below, where Bertram Wigglesworth was probably still humming off-key while changing light bulbs on a ladder held together by electrical tape and blind faith. "Put this," he said quietly. "Any species that considers wrestling with chickens a minor occupational hazard, drinks liquids that could dissolve hull plating, and repairs equipment by grabbing red-hot metal with their bare hands, should be avoided at all costs." "And the recommended first contact protocol?" Ziniflex asked. Clothep thought about Bertram's cheerful offer of egg salad sandwiches with military-grade hot sauce, and his casual mention of a grandmother who treated 30-foot falls as minor inconveniences. "Run," he said simply. "Run very, very fast. And whatever you do, do not accept any beverage they offer you. They call it tea, but our censors classified it as a weapon of mass destruction." 3 weeks later, the Galactic Classification Committee received an unprecedented request to create an entirely new category of planetary designation. The request came with 17 separate incident reports, 43 medical evaluations, and a strongly worded recommendation that any future contact with Earth should be conducted via unmanned probe from a distance of at least 12 light-years. The new classification was approved unanimously. From that day forward, Earth became the first and only planet to be designated as Class 15 Plus Ultra Extreme, a rating that came with an official warning label stating, "Inhabitants may appear harmless, but should be considered capable of surviving conditions that would kill immortal beings. Approach with extreme caution, preferably while wearing full environmental suits and carrying enough sedatives to tranquilize a small moon." But Bertram Wigglesworth never found out about any of this. He was too busy fixing that squeaky door in the supply closet, humming My Way off-key, and wondering if those nice alien visitors would ever come back for that cup of tea he'd promised them. After all, he'd made extra biscuits. 3 months after what would become known as the Bertram incident in classified military circles, the ripple effects were still spreading across the galaxy like a particularly persistent case of cosmic indigestion. The Galactic Marine Corps had been forced to completely rewrite their training manuals, adding an entirely new section titled "What to Do When Everything You Know About Combat Survival Turns Out to Be Laughably Inadequate." Commander Clothep, meanwhile, had been promoted to the newly created position of Director of Impossible Planetary Phenomena, a job that came with its own private therapy sessions and an unlimited supply of anti-anxiety medication. His first official act was to issue a galaxy-wide bulletin that read simply, "If you encounter a human, do not attempt to impress them with your military prowess. They will accidentally humiliate you while asking if you'd like a nice cup of tea." But the universe, as it often does when things are going relatively smoothly, decided to throw a spanner in the works. The spanner, in this case, came in the form of the Rigelian Supremacy Council, a collection of militaristic, jellyfish-like creatures who had built their entire civilization around the concept that they were the toughest, meanest, most combat-ready species in the galaxy. They had conquered 47 star systems, established the largest military academy in known space, and possessed enough firepower to sterilize entire planets before lunch. When they received the bulletin about Earth's reclassification, their response was predictably direct. "Ridiculous! These humans are clearly being overestimated by incompetent military personnel. We shall demonstrate proper first contact protocols and show these primitives what real warriors look like." Admiral Greg Stockel, Supreme Commander of the Rigelian War Fleet, was particularly enthusiastic about the mission. He had personally defeated the legendary beasts of Proxima Centauri, had arm-wrestled his way to victory in the Galactic Combat Championships for 6 consecutive years, and once ate a live Arcturus flame worm as a light snack. In his professional opinion, any species that lived on a Class 15 world was probably made of tissue paper and good intentions. "We shall land on this Earth," he announced to his assembled fleet commanders, "and demonstrate to the galaxy how proper warriors conduct themselves. These humans will surrender immediately upon witnessing our superior military bearing." What Greg Stockel didn't know was that his landing coordinates had been calculated based on the original incident report. What he really didn't know was that Bertram Wigglesworth had been having an unusually challenging week, even by his standards. The Pemberton Municipal Office Building's heating system had finally given up the ghost. The coffee machine had achieved sentience and was now refusing to make anything stronger than chamomile tea, and someone had stuffed the main elevator full of packing peanuts as what they presumably thought was a hilarious prank. Bertram was, in his own mild-mannered way, slightly annoyed. "Well," he said to himself as he surveyed the chaos in the lobby, "this is turning into quite the week. First the boiler, then the coffee machine develops an attitude, and now this nonsense with the elevator. Some people have no consideration for others." He was in the process of scooping packing peanuts into garbage bags when the Rigelian landing craft punched through the building's roof like an over-enthusiastic meteorite. The crash was spectacular. Dust, debris, and assorted office supplies rained down from the ceiling, covering everything in a fine layer of what had once been the accounting department's filing system. The Rigelian ship, designed to withstand direct hits from plasma cannons, had been stopped dead by what appeared to be a particularly stubborn, load-bearing beam. Bertram looked up from his garbage bag, observed the massive alien spacecraft now wedged in his ceiling, and sighed the sort of sigh that comes from 42 years of dealing with the unexpected. "Oh, for crying out loud," he muttered, "and I just finished cleaning the lobby." The ship's airlock hissed open with a sound like an angry steam kettle, and Admiral Greg Stockel emerged in full battle regalia. He was 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor plating that could deflect military-grade explosives, and possessed enough tentacles to operate 17 different weapons simultaneously. His entrance was calculated to strike terror into the hearts of any who witnessed it. Bertram's response was to put down his garbage bag and fish a clipboard out of his pocket. "Right then," he said briskly, clicking his pen. "I'll need your name, the purpose of your visit, and who's going to be responsible for the damage to my ceiling. Because I can tell you right now, the insurance company is not going to be happy about this." The silence that followed was profound. Grexthokul had prepared for many possible responses to his dramatic entrance: screams of terror, immediate surrender, perhaps some begging for mercy. He had not prepared for bureaucratic paperwork. What?" he managed. "Your name," Bertram repeated patiently, as if speaking to someone who was slightly hard of hearing. "For the incident report, and please speak clearly. My handwriting's not what it used to be, and I want to make sure I spell it right." Behind Grexthokul, his elite assault team was beginning to emerge from the ship. Each warrior was a veteran of countless battles, equipped with enough weaponry to level a small city and trained to show no mercy to their enemies. They took one look at the elderly human with the clipboard and immediately began checking their equipment for malfunctions. "This is not how first contact is supposed to work," Lieutenant Vexplural whispered to his companion. "Maybe he's in shock," suggested Sergeant Klepthara. "Trauma can make primitives act irrationally." "Say, you know," Bertram continued, still poised with his pen, "if you're here about the plumbing situation, I should mention that I called the repair service 3 times last week, and they kept saying they'd send someone out soon. If you ask me, their definition of soon needs some serious adjustment. We are not plumbers," Grexthokul roared, his voice echoing through the building with enough force to crack windows. "We are the Rigelian Supremacy Council, the most feared military force in the galaxy." "Oh," Bertram said, making a note on his clipboard. "Well, that's different then. Though I have to say, your landing technique could use some work. You've made quite a mess of my ceiling, and I only just had the place painted." "Your ceiling?" Grexthokul looked around at the destruction his ship had caused. In his experience, primitive species usually focused on the fact that they were about to be conquered, not on interior decorating concerns. "Yes, the ceiling!" Bertram gestured emphatically at the gaping hole above them. "Do you have any idea how difficult it is to get painters to come out to a municipal building? I had to book them 6 months in advance, and now I'll have to start the whole process over again." The Admiral found himself in the unusual position of feeling slightly guilty about property damage. This was not a sensation he was familiar with, having spent most of his career reducing planets to their component atoms. "Listen, human," he said, attempting to regain control of the situation. "I am Admiral Grexthokul of the Rigelian Warfleet. I have come to demonstrate the superiority of our military forces and demand your immediate—" "Grexthokul," Bertram interrupted, carefully writing the name on his clipboard. "That's Grexthokul. Or is there an extra X in there somewhere?" "There is no extra X," Grexthokul snapped. "And stop writing. You should be cowering in terror." "Cowering?" Bertram looked puzzled. "Why would I cower? You haven't done anything particularly frightening yet. Apart from the ceiling incident, of course, but that's more annoying than scary." "Annoying?" Grexthokul's tentacles writhed with indignation. "I am the terror of 17 star systems. I have laid waste to entire civilizations. I once destroyed a moon just because I didn't like the way it was orbiting." "That seems a bit extreme," Bertram observed mildly. "Couldn't you have just asked them to adjust the orbit? Most spacefaring civilizations are quite reasonable about that sort of thing, in my experience." "In your experience?" Grexthokul was beginning to experience the same sort of existential confusion that had plagued Commander Clothep. What experience could a primitive Class 15 species possibly have with spacefaring civilizations? "Oh, well," Bertram said modestly, "you're actually the second group of aliens to visit this month, though the last lot were much more polite about it, took their shoes off at the door and everything." The Rigelian assault team exchanged worried glances. In their extensive military databases, there was no record of any other species making contact with Earth. Either their intelligence network had suffered a catastrophic failure, or something very strange was happening. Who were these other aliens? Lieutenant Vex Plural asked suspiciously. Lovely fellows, Bertram replied cheerfully. Very professional, military types like yourselves, but with better manners. They even offered to help with the cleaning, though I had to turn them down. They seemed a bit delicate for proper maintenance work. Delicate? Sergeant Klepthara's voice cracked slightly. Oh, yes. Kept complaining about the heat in the boiler room, and the toxic fumes from the cleaning supplies gave them the most dreadful headaches. I felt quite sorry for them, really. Clearly not used to working in challenging environments. Admiral Grex Thokul was beginning to suspect that his intelligence briefings might have contained some significant omissions. These other aliens, did they happen to mention their species designation? Oh, they were from something called the Galactic Marine Corps, Bertram said helpfully. Elite forces, they said, trained on some sort of Deathworld. Lovely lads, but a bit high-strung. One of them nearly fainted when I fixed the boiler. The colour drained from Grexitokul's face, which was quite an achievement, considering he was already a sort of translucent blue to begin with. The Galactic Marine Corps were legendary throughout the galaxy for their toughness. The fact that they had apparently been reduced to near fainting by routine maintenance work was concerning. And they just left? He asked weakly. Well, yes, Bertram nodded. They seemed in quite a hurry, actually. Keep meaning to send them a thank you card for visiting, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. Busy week, you understand? Right, Grex Thokul said faintly. Busy week. Speaking of which, Bertram continued briskly, if you're not here about the plumbing, and you're not here to help with the cleaning, what exactly can I do for you? Because I've got quite a lot to get through today, and standing around chatting isn't going to get my work done. The Admiral looked around at his elite assault team, each one armed with enough firepower to level a city block, and realized that he was completely out of his depth. In all his years of military service, he had never encountered a situation where the local population treated a full-scale military invasion as a minor scheduling inconvenience. We are here, he said slowly, to demonstrate our military superiority and establish dominance over your species. Oh, Bertram said, making another note on his clipboard. Well, that's interesting, though I should mention you might want to talk to the mayor about that sort of thing. I'm just the janitor. I don't really have the authority to make decisions about species dominance. That's more of an administrative matter. You don't understand, Grex Thokul exploded. We are not here to negotiate. We are here to conquer. Conquer, Bertram repeated thoughtfully. Right. Well, good luck with that then. Though you might want to start with something smaller than the whole planet. Maybe just conquer the 3rd floor first? The air conditioning's been acting up there anyway, so it could probably use some new management. The suggestion that he should start his galactic conquest by taking control of a malfunctioning air conditioning system was so unexpected that Grex Thokul's brain simply shut down for a few seconds. When it rebooted, he found himself seriously considering the proposal. No, he said firmly, shaking his head. I will not be diverted by your primitive mind games. Behold our weapons. Tremble before our might. He gestured dramatically, and his assault team immediately began displaying their arsenal. Plasma rifles that could melt through battleship armor. Molecular disruptors that could reduce solid matter to its component atoms. Gravity hammers capable of creating localized black holes. Bertram examined the weapons with the sort of polite interest usually reserved for a neighbor's holiday photographs. Very nice, he said appreciatively, though they look a bit heavy for practical use. Do you have to carry all of that around everywhere you go? Must be murder on your backs. They are the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, Lieutenant Vexiplural protested. Oh, I'm sure they are, Bertram agreed. Very impressive, though I have to say they seem a bit over-engineered for most practical applications. Take that one there, for instance. He pointed at a particularly large plasma cannon. Looks like it could probably punch a hole through a concrete wall, right? It can punch a hole through a mountain, Sergeant Klepthara declared proudly. Well, yes, Bertram nodded. But when was the last time you needed to punch a hole through a mountain? I mean, in day-to-day life. Most of the time you just need to get through a wall, or maybe a locked door. Seems like a bit of overkill, doesn't it? The Rigelian warriors exchanged uncertain glances. In all their years of military training, nobody had ever questioned the practical applications of their weaponry. The concept that their arsenal might be excessive for routine tasks was unsettling. Besides, Bertram continued cheerfully, I've got something that can punch holes through walls, and it doesn't require a nuclear power source to operate. He reached into his toolkit and produced what appeared to be a simple manual drill. I've been using this for 20 years. Works every time, and you don't have to worry about accidentally vaporizing the neighboring solar system. The sight of a primitive hand tool being compared favorably to their advanced military technology was the final straw for Admiral Grexthuckle's composure. Enough! He roared. I will demonstrate our superiority once and for all. Behold, as I lift this massive debris with my enhanced strength. He gestured toward a large chunk of concrete that had fallen from the ceiling during their dramatic entrance. The piece weighed approximately 2 tons and would require significant effort even for his enhanced physiology. But it would surely demonstrate the vast gulf between Rigelian physical capabilities and human frailty. Grexthuckle positioned himself next to the concrete chunk, activated his strength enhancement systems, and began to lift. Hydraulic systems whined, power cells discharged. His natural armor plating creaked under the strain. After 30 seconds of maximum effort, he managed to raise the debris approximately 6 inches off the ground before setting it down again, breathing heavily. There! He gasped triumphantly. Let's see your primitive biology match that! Bertram looked at the concrete chunk thoughtfully. Oh, that one? Yes, that's been bothering me. It's right in the middle of my cleaning path. He walked over to the debris, grabbed it casually with both hands, and moved it to one side with the same effort most people use to relocate a coffee table. The silence that followed was so complete that they could hear the elevator's mechanical systems having what sounded like an existential crisis 3 floors up. How? Grexthuckle whispered. Is that possible? Oh, you just have to know the right technique, Bertram explained helpfully. Lift with your legs, not your back. My grandmother taught me that, saved me years of chiropractic bills. But that weighs 2 tons. Does it? Bertram looked surprised. Felt about normal to me. Though I suppose I've been doing this sort of work for so long, you develop a feel for these things. Practice makes perfect, as they say. Lieutenant Vex Plural's scanner was making alarmed beeping sounds. Sir, he croaked, according to these readings, that human just moved a mass equivalent to 17 fully loaded combat shuttles. 17? Bertram looked pleased. That's not bad for a Tuesday, though you should see me on Mondays. That's when I move the heavy stuff. Admiral Grexthuckle sat down heavily on a piece of rubble, his tentacles drooping with defeat. In the space of 30 minutes, his entire world view had been systematically dismantled by a cheerful janitor with a clipboard. Everything he had believed about military superiority, advanced technology, and the natural order of the universe had turned out to be woefully inadequate when confronted with a human who considered moving 2-ton concrete blocks a minor inconvenience. This is impossible, he muttered. We trained for years to achieve our current strength levels. We have cybernetic enhancements, genetic modifications, performance drugs that would kill lesser species. Oh, performance drugs. Bertram nodded knowingly. I tried those once. Energy drinks, they called them. Made me feel all jittery and kept me awake half the night. Much prefer a good cup of tea. Speaking of which, would anyone like some? I've got a kettle in the supply closet. The mention of Bertram's tea-making capabilities caused several of the Rigelian warriors to take involuntary steps backward. Commander Clothep's report had specifically warned about human beverages, describing them as chemical weapons disguised as refreshments. "No, thank you," Grexthockel said quickly. We're fine." "Are you sure?" Bertram looked concerned. "You all look a bit peaky. And no wonder, crashing through roofs and carrying all that heavy equipment around must be exhausting." "It's not supposed to be exhausting," Sergeant Klepthara whimpered. "We're supposed to be the strongest species in the galaxy." "Oh, I'm sure you're very strong," Bertram said kindly. "Just maybe not quite as strong as you thought. Happens to everyone. I remember when I first started this job, I thought I was pretty tough. Then I tried to move the old boiler by myself and nearly gave myself a hernia. Learned my lesson that day, I can tell you." You moved a boiler?" Lieutenant Vexaplural asked faintly. "Oh, yes. The old one was completely shot. Weighs about 3 tons, that thing. Had to take it apart piece by piece to get it up the stairs. Took me the better part of an afternoon, though the new one's much lighter, only about 2.5 tons. Technology keeps improving, doesn't it?" The Rigelian assault team was now openly staring at their scanners, which were providing readouts that defied every known law of physics. According to their instruments, they were in the presence of a being whose casual physical capabilities exceeded those of most military-grade construction equipment. "I think," Admiral Grexthockel said slowly, "we may have made a mistake." "Oh, everyone makes mistakes," Bertram said cheerfully. "The important thing is learning from them, though I have to say, crashing through my ceiling was quite a big one. The repair costs alone are going to be astronomical." We could help with the repairs?" Grexthockel offered tentatively. "That's very kind of you," Bertram beamed, "though I'm not sure your equipment is really suitable for construction work. All very impressive for military applications, I'm sure, but a bit specialized for general maintenance. Tell you what, though, there's a hardware store downtown that rents proper tools, much more practical for this sort of job." The suggestion that their advanced military technology was less suitable for construction work than rented hardware store equipment was perhaps the most devastating blow yet to their professional pride. "Right," Grexthockel said weakly. "Hardware store, of course. Now then," Bertram continued briskly, "if you're going to be staying on Earth for a while, you'll need to register with the authorities. I've got the forms right here." He produced a stack of paperwork from seemingly nowhere. "Just basic visitor information. Name, species, home planet, duration of stay, purpose of visit. Nothing too complicated." "Purpose of visit," Lieutenant Vexaplural read aloud from the form. "What do we put for galactic conquest attempt?" "Oh, just put down tourism," Bertram suggested helpfully. "Much simpler for the paperwork, and technically you are here to see the sights, aren't you?" Admiral Grexthockel stared at the form in his tentacles, trying to process the concept that his grand military invasion had been reduced to a tourism visa application. Somewhere in the distance he could hear the sound of his reputation crumbling like a cookie in a blender. "Tourism," he repeated numbly. "That's the spirit," Bertram said encouragingly. "And if you're going to be tourists, you really should see some of the local attractions. The municipal building here isn't much to look at, but we've got a lovely park just down the street, and the diner on 5th Street does a wonderful meatloaf." "Meatloaf," Sergeant Klepthara whispered, his voice hollow with despair. "Oh, yes, it's their specialty, though I should warn you it's quite filling. Last time I had it, I couldn't move for an hour afterward. Mind you, that might have been because I also had the apple pie. Mrs. Henderson makes it with extra cinnamon, and it's delicious." The mental image of these supposedly fearsome warriors being defeated by a large dinner was somehow even more demoralizing than their previous humiliations. "Perhaps," Grexthockel said carefully, "we should reconsider our mission parameters." "Oh, that's probably wise," Bertram agreed. "Always good to be flexible with your plans. Life has a way of throwing curveballs at you when you least expect them. Take this week, for instance. I certainly didn't expect to have aliens crashing through my ceiling. But you adapt, don't you? Roll with the punches. Roll with the punches, Grextockel repeated, wondering when his life had become so thoroughly surreal. Right then, Bertram said, consulting his clipboard again. I really should get back to work. These packing peanuts won't clean themselves up, but it's been lovely meeting you all. Do come back and visit again soon. We will, Grextockel promised, though he wasn't entirely sure why. As the Rigelian assault team filed back into their damaged spacecraft, each warrior deep in contemplation about the fundamental nature of strength and the relative importance of advanced weaponry versus proper lifting technique, Bertram waved goodbye cheerfully. Drive safely, he called after them. And remember, hardware store downtown if you need any proper tools. The Rigelian ship lifted off slowly, its hull scraping against the edges of the hole they had created in their dramatic entrance. As they achieved orbit, Admiral Grextockel began composing his report to the Supremacy Council. Mission status, complete failure, he dictated. Recommendation, immediate reclassification of Earth to Class Impossible Plus. Further recommendation, any future contact with humans should be conducted via diplomatic channels, with extreme emphasis on politeness. What about our conquest objectives? Lieutenant Vex Plural asked. Grextockel thought about Bertram Wigglesworth, cheerfully cleaning up packing peanuts while discussing the relative merits of proper lifting technique and meatloaf, and shuddered. Cancel them, he said firmly. Cancel them all. And send a message to every military force in the galaxy. Do not attempt to conquer Earth. The locals are far too dangerous. Dangerous? Sergeant Klepthara looked confused. But he was so nice. That, Grextockel replied, with the wisdom of someone who had just learned a very important lesson about the universe, is what makes them terrifying. 6 months later, the Galactic Classification Committee received their second unanimous request to reclassify Earth. This time, however, the recommendation came with additional documentation, including 17 medical reports, 43 psychological evaluations, and a strongly worded suggestion that the planet should be designated as a friendly exclusion zone. The new classification was approved without debate. Earth became the first planet in galactic history to be simultaneously designated as completely harmless and absolutely not to be invaded under any circumstances. Nay, the official documentation noted that while the local population appeared to be genuinely pleasant and helpful, they possessed the apparently supernatural ability to accidentally humiliate even the most elite military forces, simply by going about their daily routines. A footnote was added to all galactic navigation charts. Warning: local inhabitants may offer refreshments. Politely decline unless you wish to experience chemical burns disguised as hospitality. But Bertram Wigglesworth remained blissfully unaware of his newly elevated status as the most inadvertently intimidating janitor in known space. He was too busy trying to figure out why the coffee machine had started dispensing what appeared to be industrial lubricant, and wondering if those nice alien fellows would ever come back to help with the ceiling repairs. After all, he had made extra biscuits.